Part 1. The Ultimatum, the Massive Doors of the Galactic Council. Chamber opened with a deep rumble that echoed through the vast hall. Ambassador Kane walked forward, his boots clicking against the smooth metal floor. Round him, hundreds of alien beings sat in their designated seats, their eyes following his every move. The chamber was enormous, built to hold representatives from over 50 different species across the galaxy. Kane felt small in this place. The ceiling stretched so high above that it disappeared into darkness. Giant screens showed his face too. Every corner of the chamber, he knew that billions of beings across the galaxy were watching this moment. His heart beat faster, but he kept his face calm. This was not the time to show fear. At the center of the chamber stood the speaker's platform, where the most powerful alien leaders waited. Chancellor Vex of the Vorthok Empire towered over everyone else. His blue skin seemed to glow under the bright lights, and his forearms moved with careful precision. Next to him sat Admiral Kor from the Hegemony Fleet, her silver scales catching the light as she breathed slowly through her gills. Human Ambassador Kane, Chancellor Vex's voice boomed through the chamber without any speakers. His species could project their voices across great distances. You stand before the Galactic Council to hear our final decision regarding your species. Kane stepped up to the small platform meant for him. It was much lower than the alien platforms, making him look up at them like a child talking to adults. He knew this was done on purpose. Everything in this chamber was designed to make humans feel small and unimportant. The Council has watched your species for 50 years. Admiral Kor spoke next, her voice sounding like water flowing over rocks. We have seen you spread across 12 star systems. We have seen you build colonies and mining stations. We have seen your military ships patrol space that once belonged to others. Kane listened carefully. He had expected this conversation, but hearing it still made his stomach tight with worry. Behind him, Captain Ross from Earth's Defense Force stood quietly. They had both known this day would come. Species is too aggressive, another voice called out. This came from Senator Mal of the Trade Federation, a being that looked like a giant insect with wings that never stopped moving. You take resources without asking. You build weapons when we offer peace. You expand into space that other species need. The chamber filled with sounds of agreement. Clicks, whistles, and growls came from different alien species as they showed their support for these words. Kane felt the weight of their disapproval pressing down on him. Chancellor Vex raised one of his 4 hands, and the chamber became silent again. The Council has made its decision. Your species will leave the Kepler 442 system within 24 Earth hours. All human presence must be removed from that system. Kane's blood went cold. Kepler 442 was humanity's newest colony, home to 3 million people. It was also their most important colony because it had the only planet they had found that could grow Earth crops without special equipment. Chancellor Kane spoke carefully. 3 million human civilians live in that system. 24 hours is not enough time to evacuate them safely. That is not our concern, Admiral Kor replied. Her black eyes showed no emotion. Your species chose to expand too quickly. You chose to ignore our warnings. Now you must face the results of those choices. Kane felt anger rising in his chest, but he pushed it down. Getting angry now would only make things worse. What happens if we cannot complete the evacuation in time? Chancellor Vex leaned forward on his platform. Then the Galactic Defense Fleet will remove your presence for us. 800 ships from 12 different species are already moving toward Kepler 442. They will arrive exactly 24 hours from now. The number hit Kane like a physical blow. 800 ships. Humanity's entire fleet had maybe 60 combat-ready vessels. Most of those were scattered across their territory, protecting other colonies. This is your final warning, human. Senator Mal's wings beat faster as he spoke. Your species has grown too bold, too dangerous. The galaxy will be safer without human expansion. Kane looked around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at him. Some looked angry, others seemed bored, and a few actually looked sad, but none of them spoke up for humanity. After 50 years of trade and diplomacy, Not one species was willing to stand with them. "I understand the Council's decision," Kane said finally. "I will communicate it to my government immediately." "See that you do?" Chancellor Vex stood up, his full height making him look like a giant. 24 hours. Human. Not 1 minute longer. The session ended with a deep tone that resonated through the chamber. Kane turned and walked back toward the exit, his legs feeling weak. Captain Ross fell into step beside him, his face pale. 800 ships, Ross whispered, as they walked through the corridors outside the chamber. "Sir, we can't fight that many. Our entire colonial fleet couldn't handle that kind of force." Kane nodded grimly. "I know. I need to contact Earth. Immediately, get me a secure channel to President Walsh." They reached the human embassy section of the station, a small area that suddenly felt very isolated. Kane sat down at his communication desk and activated the quantum relay that would send his message across the galaxy to Earth. The transmission would take 6 hours to reach home, and another 6 hours for any reply to come back. 12 hours for Earth to organize a response. President Walsh, Kane spoke into the recorder, knowing his words would decide the fate of 3 million people. "The Galactic Council has given us an ultimatum. All human presence must be removed from the Kepler 442 system within 24 hours, or they will attack with 800 ships from the combined alien fleets." He paused, thinking about the colony ships full of families, the research stations, where scientists worked to make new discoveries, the mining platforms that provided resources for all of human space. "Mr. President, I don't see how we can evacuate 3 million people in time. Our transport ships can't carry that many passengers, and we don't have enough vessels to make multiple trips." "I'm transmitting all the details of the council session. Whatever we're going to do, we need to decide quickly." Kane ended the transmission and leaned back in his chair. Through the window of his office, he could see alien ships moving through space around the station. Normal traffic, but it reminded him how alone humans were out here. Every species in the galaxy seemed united against them. Captain Ross was already working at his own terminal, calling up fleet positions and transport capabilities. "Sir, I'm running the numbers. Even if we mobilize every civilian transport, every cargo hauler, every ship that can carry passengers, we might save 300,000 people, maybe 400,000 if we pack them in like cargo." Kane closed his eyes. 3 million people, and they could save less than 500,000. The rest would die when the alien fleet arrived. Men, women, children, families who had traveled across the galaxy to build new lives among the stars. His communication console beeped with an incoming message. Kane looked at the sender and felt his heart sink even further. It was from Commander Blake aboard the Defiance, the main colony ship in orbit around Kepler 442b. "Ambassador Kane, we received word of the Council's decision through unofficial channels. The colonists are asking questions I can't answer." "What do I tell 3 million? People who are about to lose everything they've built?" Part 2. The Impossible Plan, the Emergency Meeting Room in the White. House had never seen so many people packed into such a small space. President Walsh sat at the head of the long table, her face tired from 12 hours of constant discussions. Around her, the most important people in human government and military argued about options that all seemed hopeless. "We cannot evacuate 3 million people in 12 hours, General Foster said for the 10th time. His voice was getting louder with each repetition. "Our transport fleet can carry maybe 400,000 if we strip out everything except life support. That leaves 2.5 million people to die." Defense Secretary Torres looked up from her tablet. "What if we fight? Our ships are smaller but faster than theirs. Maybe we can hold them off long enough to get more people out." Admiral Brooks shook his head. 60 ships against 800, Lisa? That's not a battle. That's suicide." "Even if we somehow won, the entire galaxy would come down on us. This isn't just about Kepler 442 anymore. This is about whether humanity survives at all." President Walsh rubbed her temples. The headache had been growing worse for hours. Every solution they discussed ended the same way, with millions of human deaths and possibly the end of their species. "There has to be something," she said quietly. "We didn't come this far to give up now." At the far end of the table, Chief Engineer Thompson had been quiet for most of the meeting. He was known for being careful with his words, thinking through problems before speaking. Everyone knew he was brilliant, but he rarely talked in political meetings like this. Actually, Thompson said suddenly, his voice so quiet that everyone had to lean forward to hear him. There might be something. General Foster looked annoyed. Marcus, this isn't the time for experimental ideas. We need real solutions. Thompson stood up and walked to the large screen on the wall. He pulled up a file that made several people gasp. The words Project Phoenix Classified appeared in red letters. What is this? President Walsh asked. Something we've been working on for 8 years, Thompson replied. His fingers moved across the control panel, bringing up complex diagrams and equations, quantum tunneling on a massive scale, the ability to create stable wormholes between distant points in space. The room went silent. Everyone stared at the diagrams showing lines connecting different star systems. Defense Secretary Torres was the first to speak. Marcus, are you talking about teleportation? Moving objects instantly across space? Not objects, Thompson corrected. Everything. Ships, people, entire space stations. The theory is solid. We've even tested it on a small scale with unmanned probes. Admiral Brooks leaned forward. If this works, why haven't we heard about it? Before, Thompson's expression became serious. Because the energy requirements are enormous. To create a tunnel big enough to move a ship, we need power equal to a small star, to move 3 million people and all their equipment. He paused. We would need every human installation in space working together. Every installation? General Foster asked. You mean every space station? Every colony? Every ship? Every reactor? Every power plant? Every solar collector? Thompson confirmed. All of them working in perfect coordination. Even then, we would only have one chance. Something goes wrong, the energy feedback could destroy entire solar systems. President Walsh stared at the diagrams. How long would it take to set up? If we started right now, and if everything went perfectly, maybe 18 hours? That gives us 6 hours to actually move everyone. That's cutting it very close, Admiral Brooks said. The alien fleet arrives in exactly 12 hours. Dr. Park, from the Science Division, had been studying the equations on the screen. Marcus, these calculations assume we have quantum anchor stations already built throughout human space. Do we actually have those? Thompson smiled for the first time in hours. We've been building them for 3 years, small installations hidden. Inside regular space stations and colonies, most people don't even know they're there. I told everyone they were communication boosters. You've been preparing for this without telling anyone? General Foster's voice showed both anger and amazement. We've been preparing for the possibility that humanity might need to move fast someday, Thompson replied. We never thought it would be like this, but the basic infrastructure is already in place. President Walsh stood up and walked to the screen. She studied the network of lines connecting dozens of human settlements. If this works, we could move everyone to safety. More than that, Thompson said. We could move everything. Space stations, mining platforms, manufacturing facilities. The aliens want us out of Kepler 442? Fine, but we don't have to leave anything behind for them. The room erupted in discussion. Everyone started talking at once, asking questions and raising concerns. President Walsh raised her hand for silence. What are the risks? She asked. Thompson's expression became grim. If the quantum calculations are wrong, we could tear holes in space-time itself. If the power coordination fails, we could overload every reactor in human space simultaneously. If the anchor stations aren't perfectly aligned, we could send ships into the middle of stars or empty space. And if we do nothing, President Walsh asked, 3 million people die, and humanity becomes a refugee species hiding in whatever corner of the galaxy the aliens let us keep. President Walsh looked around. The room had all the faces staring at her. These people were waiting for her to make the most important decision in human history. How many people know about Project Phoenix? She asked. The core engineering team is maybe 50 people, Thompson replied. But to make this work, we'll need to bring thousands of engineers and technicians into the loop. Every major installation, We'll need teams working on their quantum anchors. Can we trust them to keep quiet until we're ready? Mr. President, Admiral Brooks said, once we start powering up quantum systems across human space, the aliens will notice. Their sensors will pick up the energy signatures. We won't be able to hide this for long. Thompson nodded. That's true. Once we begin the startup sequence, we'll have maybe 6 hours before the aliens realize what we're doing. After that, they might try to stop us. General Foster was studying the timeline on his tablet. So we need to evacuate 3 million people. And all their equipment through untested wormholes, while 800 alien ships are shooting at us. That's about right, Thompson said calmly. President Walsh closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, her voice was steady and strong. Marcus, what do you need from me? Full authorization to activate every classified installation. In human space, permission to push every reactor beyond safe limits. An agreement from every colony administrator and ship captain that they'll follow orders without asking questions. You have it, President Walsh said immediately. General Foster, send out the activation codes. Admiral Brooks, prepare our fleet. For whatever comes next, Dr. Park, get your best scientists working on backup calculations. If this goes wrong, I want to know exactly how wrong. Thompson was already pulling up communication channels to installations across human space. Mr. President, I need you to understand something. What we're about to attempt has never been tried by any species in galactic history. We're going to push the laws of physics harder than they've ever been pushed before. Then I guess we're about to find out what humans can do when we have no other choice, President Walsh replied. The room filled with activity as everyone began their assigned tasks. In 12 hours, they would either save their species or destroy themselves trying. But for the first time since the ultimatum arrived, there was hope in the air along with the fear. Part 3. Against all odds, Engineer Rivera wiped sweat from his forehead as he crawled through the maintenance tunnel beneath Europa Station. The quantum resonator was buried deep in the station's core, and the only way to reach it was through these narrow passages. His team had been working for 14 hours straight, and 3 of them had already collapsed from exhaustion. Hand me the calibration tool, Rivera called back to his assistant. Kelly? She passed him the device, her hands shaking from fatigue. Around them, the station hummed with energy as every system was pushed beyond its normal limits. Rivera looked at the massive device in front of him. The quantum resonator was the size of a small room covered in cables and blinking lights. Most people on the station had no idea it existed. For 3 years, they had believed it was just part of the station's communication system, the power. Levels are climbing too fast, Kelly warned, reading from her tablet. If we push it much higher, the whole thing might explode. Then we'll have to risk it, Rivera replied. He connected the calibration tool to the resonator's main control panel. Earth needs us to make this work. 3 million people are counting on us. The resonator's humming grew louder as Rivera made the final adjustments. The sound was so deep that it seemed to come from inside his bones. Warning lights flashed red throughout the maintenance area. Alex, the temperature is rising too fast, Kelly said, panic creeping into her voice. The cooling systems can't handle this much heat. Just a few more minutes, Rivera muttered, his fingers flying over the controls. The equations that Dr. Thompson had sent were incredibly complex, but he had spent years studying quantum mechanics. If anyone could make this work, it was him. On the other side of the solar system, Supervisor Cross stood in the control room of Titan 7 mining colony, watching her workers perform the impossible. The entire mining operation had been shut down so they could convert their industrial equipment into a massive signal amplifier. How much power are we generating? Cross asked her chief engineer, Garcia. 200% of normal capacity, Garcia replied, sweat dripping down his face despite the cold air pumping through the room. The fusion reactors are running so hot that the safety systems keep trying to shut them down. Cross looked out through the control room window at the mining facility below. Hundreds of workers moved like ants, connecting cables and installing equipment that had arrived on emergency transport ships just hours ago. They were turning their home into a giant machine, and none of them fully understood what they were. Building, ma'am. One of the technicians called out. We're getting reports from the outer platforms. The miners are refusing to evacuate to the inner stations. They want to stay and help with the work. Cross felt a surge of pride. These people knew they were risking their lives, but they refused to abandon their posts. Tell them to stay if they want to, but make sure they understand the risks. If this goes wrong, we might all die. The technician nodded and returned to his console. Cross looked back out at her workers, knowing that many of them might not survive the next few hours. Meanwhile, in the cargo bay of the transport ship New Horizon, Captain Miller was performing his own miracle. The ship was designed to carry heavy equipment between colonies. But now it was packed with evacuation pods from the Kepler 442 system. "We've got them stacked for high," his cargo chief, Davis, reported. "The weight distribution is all wrong. And the life support systems are overloaded, but everyone's alive." Miller looked at the readouts on his console. The ship was carrying 3 times its safe passenger limit, and the engines were straining to maintain course. "How many more runs can we make at this rate?" "Maybe 2 more before the engines give out completely," Davis replied. "But sir, I'm not sure the evacuation pods can handle that many trips. They're not designed for this kind of stress."
Miller
thought about the families packed into those pods, breathing recycled air, and trusting him to get them to safety. "We'll make it work." Left it. In the research laboratories of Ganymede Station, Dr. James worked frantically to solve equations that had puzzled scientists for decades. The quantum tunnel network required precise calculations to create stable wormholes, and a single mistake could send ships into the heart of a star. "The power fluctuations are affecting the quantum field stability," his assistant, Dr. Wong, reported. "Every time a station comes online, it changes the calculations for all the others." James rubbed his tired eyes. He had been working with numbers for so long that they seemed to dance in front of him. "We need to find a way to compensate for the fluctuations in real time. The quantum fields have to be perfectly synchronized across dozens of star systems." "That's never been done before," Dr. Wong said. "The processing power required would be enormous." "Then we'll use every computer in human space," James replied. "Link them all together. Make one giant computer out of everything we have." As the hours passed, similar scenes played out across human space. On Mars, engineers worked to modify the planetary defense grid into a quantum anchor. On the asteroid mining station Series 3, workers used industrial equipment to build signal boosters from spare parts. On the research ship Discovery, scientists ran calculations while their ship's computer systems overheated from the massive data processing requirements. But it was not just the technical challenges that pushed humans to their limits. The psychological pressure was enormous. Everyone knew that failure meant death for millions of people, yet somehow they kept working. On the colony ship Defiance, orbiting Kepler 44b, Commander Blake watched the evacuation efforts with growing amazement. Transport ships that should have taken days to load were being filled in hours. Families were saying goodbye to their homes and boarding evacuation pods with whatever they could carry. "Sir," his communications officer, Lieutenant Hayes, reported, "We're getting reports from across the system. The evacuation is proceeding faster than anyone thought possible." Blake looked at the tactical display showing dozens of ships moving between the planet and the evacuation fleet. "How are they doing it? They're taking risks that would normally be considered insane," Hayes replied. "Ships are carrying twice their safe passenger loads. Pilots are making approaches that push their engines to the breaking point. Everyone's working like their lives depend on it." "Their lives do depend on it," Blake said quietly. In the alien monitoring station at the edge of the system, Commander Thek watched the human activity with growing confusion. His instruments showed energy readings that made no sense. The humans were generating more power than their technology should be capable of producing. "What are they doing?" his science officer Zor asked. "The energy patterns don't match anything in our databases." They studied the displays showing human ships and stations throughout their territory. Every installation was showing unusual activity. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's happening across their entire civilization. Send a message to the fleet and tell them to be ready for anything." As the 18th hour approached, the impossible was becoming reality. Across human space, thousands of people were working together to achieve something that had never been attempted before. Engineers, scientists, miners, pilots, and ordinary citizens were all part of the same desperate effort. The quantum resonators were coming online. The signal amplifiers were reaching full power. The evacuation ships were filled beyond capacity. And deep in the research labs, the final calculations were being completed. Humanity was about to attempt the impossible. Just a few more hours, they would either save their species or destroy themselves in the attempt. Part 4. The miracle of the moment had arrived. In the control room, on Earth, Chief Engineer Thompson stood before a wall of monitors showing every human installation across the galaxy. Red lights blinked everywhere, indicating systems running far beyond their safe limits. The air was thick with tension as hundreds of technicians prepared for humanity's greatest gamble. "All stations report ready," Lieutenant Martinez announced from her communication post. Her voice was steady, but Thompson could see her hands shaking as she held the microphone. Thompson looked at the countdown timer on the main screen. 3 hours and 14 minutes until the alien fleet arrived at Kepler 442. It was now or never. "Beginning quantum field initialization," Thompson said into his headset. "All stations, activate your resonators on my mark. 3.2. Mark. Cross." Human space, quantum resonators hummed to life. On Europa Station, Engineer Rivera watched his equipment glow with blue energy that seemed to bend the air around it. On Titan 7, Supervisor Cross felt the entire mining colony vibrate as massive machines channeled power into the quantum network. "Field generation stable," Dr. James reported from Ganymede Station. "Quantum signatures are matching the predicted patterns." But the real test was yet to come. Creating the quantum fields was only the first step, and they had to link them together. Across thousands of light years of space, initiating tunnel formation, Thompson announced. "All anchor stations begin synchronization sequence." The next few minutes felt like hours. On dozens of screens, technicians watched as energy readings climbed higher and higher. Warning alarms started blaring as systems approached critical levels. "Power output at 150% of maximum," someone called out. "Reactor temperatures rising beyond safe limits. Hold the line," Thompson ordered. "We need just a few more minutes." Then something incredible happened. On the main display, a green light appeared next to the first anchor station. Then another, then another. One by one, the quantum tunnels were forming, creating stable wormholes between distant points in space. "Tunnel network is online." "Doctor," James shouted from his station. "We have stable connections between all major human installations." The control room erupted in cheers, but Thompson raised his hand for silence. "This is just the beginning. Now we have to move 3 million people through these tunnels before they collapse." In the Kepler 442 system, Commander Blake received the signal he had been waiting for. "All ships, begin immediate evacuation through Quantum Tunnel Alpha 7. Transport ships with families go first. Cargo vessels with equipment follow." Captain Miller was piloting the first ship through the tunnel. As the New Horizon approached the glowing portal in space, he felt his hands grip the controls tighter. No human had ever flown through a quantum wormhole before. "Here we go," Miller said to his crew. "Hold on tight." The ship entered the tunnel and reality seemed to twist around them. The stars outside the windows stretched into long lines of light. The ship's hull groaned under forces that physics textbooks said were impossible. For a moment that felt like eternity, Miller was not sure if they were still alive. Then suddenly, they emerged into normal space near Mars. The journey that should have taken months had happened in seconds. "We made it," Miller's cargo chief, Davis, shouted. "The tunnel works." Behind them, more ships were already following through the wormhole. Transport vessels packed with colonists, cargo ships carrying entire factories, even small personal craft with families who refused to leave their possessions behind. Dr. Park watched the evacuation from the science station on Luna. Her screens showed ships appearing out of nowhere near human colonies throughout the galaxy. It was like watching magic happen in real time. "The tunnels are holding stable," she reported to Earth. "Transit time averaging 37 seconds per ship." No reported casualties so far. But the humans were not just evacuating people. They were doing something that amazed even themselves. Entire space stations were being broken down into sections and moved through the quantum tunnels. Mining platforms the size of small cities were relocated to new star systems in minutes. On Titan 7, Supervisor Cross watched as her workers dismantled their mining equipment with incredible speed. "Move the fusion reactors first," she ordered, then the processing plants. "Don't leave anything useful behind." The operation was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Humans were not just retreating from Kepler 442, they were taking everything with them. Construction robots, atmospheric processors, communication arrays, even the space elevators connecting their orbital stations to the planet's surface. "Ma'am," her chief engineer Garcia called out, "the aliens are monitoring us. Ships are detecting massive energy signatures from our quantum network." Cross looked at the distant points of light that marked the approaching alien fleet. "Let them watch. By the time they get here, there won't be anything left for them to find." In the alien command ship, Admiral Kor stared at her sensors in disbelief. The energy readings from human space were unlike anything in their databases. Entire star systems were showing power output levels that should have been impossible with human technology. "What are they doing?" she asked her science officer, Lieutenant Vex. "Unknown, Admiral," Vex replied, his four arms moving nervously over his controls. "The energy pattern suggests some kind of massive transportation system, but the scale is beyond anything we have seen before." Admiral Kor watched as human installations seemed to disappear from her long-range sensors. First, the outer mining stations went dark, then the orbital platforms, then entire space cities. "Sir," her communications officer reported, "we are receiving strange reports from our monitoring posts throughout the galaxy. Human installations are vanishing from multiple star systems simultaneously." Back in the Kepler 442 system, the evacuation was reaching its final phase. Commander Blake stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching as the last transport ships disappeared through the quantum tunnels. The space around the planet that had been filled with human activity just hours ago was now almost empty. "Final phase beginning," Blake announced to his crew. "Remaining personnel, prepare for tunnel transit." The last ships in the system were not just carrying people. They were carrying entire cities. Massive cargo vessels held the prefabricated buildings, power plants, and life support systems that had made Kepler 44 to be habitable. Even the orbital shipyards were being broken down and transported through the quantum network. "Sir, Lieutenant," Hayes reported, "all civilian evacuation complete. 3,047,612 people successfully relocated. No casualties reported." Blake felt a surge of pride. They had done it, against impossible odds. With technology that should not have worked, humanity had saved everyone. But they were not finished yet. As the alien fleet drew closer to Kepler 442, the humans prepared their final surprise. The quantum tunnels that had been used to evacuate people were now being used to relocate something else entirely. "Initiating final phase," Thompson announced. "From Earth, begin relocation of all remaining infrastructure." The space elevators connecting the planet to orbit were cut into sections and pulled through quantum portals. The atmospheric processing stations that made the planet's air breathable were dismantled and transported away. Even the communication satellites in orbit around the planet disappeared through wormholes. In less than 3 hours, humanity had not only evacuated 3 million people, but it also relocated the equivalent of an entire civilization's infrastructure. The aliens had given them an ultimatum to leave. And humans had taken everything that was not nailed down, and some things that were nailed down too. Part 5. The galaxy's new reality Admiral Kor's fleet arrived at Kepler 442, exactly 24 hours after the ultimatum had been delivered. 800 ships from 12 different alien species dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Ready to remove the human presence from the system by force, what they found was nothing. "Sensors show no human ships in the system," Lieutenant Vex reported, his voice filled with confusion. "No orbital stations, no mining platforms, no communication arrays." Admiral Kor studied her tactical display in disbelief. The system that had been bustling with human activity just days ago was completely empty. Not abandoned. Empty. There was no debris, no signs of destruction, no evidence that humans had ever been there at all. "What about the planet's surface?" she asked. Scanning now, Vex replied, his forearms moving quickly over his controls. "Admiral, this is impossible. The atmospheric processors are gone. The space elevators have been removed, even the communication. Satellites are missing." Admiral Kor felt a chill run down her spine. She had expected to find human ships trying to evacuate civilians. She had prepared for a battle against desperate defenders. She'd never imagined that the humans would simply vanish. "Sir," her communications officer called out, "we are detecting a single object in the system. It appears to be a message beacon." "Put it on screen," Admiral Kor ordered. The main display showed a small device floating in space where the human colony ship Defiance had been stationed. It was broadcasting on all frequencies, repeating the same message over and over. Ambassador Kane's face appeared on the screen, his expression calm and professional. "Greetings to the Galactic Council fleet. This message is for Admiral Kor and the combined alien forces." Admiral Kor leaned forward in her command chair. The human looked different somehow. There was no fear in his eyes, no desperation. Instead, he seemed almost satisfied. "As requested by the Galactic Council, all human presence has been removed from the Kepler 442 system," Kane continued. "We have complied fully with your ultimatum. Every human citizen, every piece of equipment, every structure built by our people has been relocated beyond this system's boundaries." The message paused, and Kane's expression grew slightly more serious. "However, I want to make something perfectly clear to the Council and to every species watching this transmission. We said we would be gone in 24 hours. We never said we would give up what belongs to us." On the bridge of the Hegemony flagship, Chancellor Vex watched the message with growing unease. He had expected the humans to beg for mercy or threaten retaliation. This calm acceptance was somehow more disturbing. The human colonies, orbital stations, mining platforms, and industrial facilities that were located in this system have been relocated to secure positions throughout human space. Kane's message continued. "Every piece of technology, every resource, every person under human protection is now beyond your reach." Admiral Kor felt her blood growing cold. "How is that possible? You cannot move entire space stations across the galaxy in 24 hours. As if answering her question, Kane's message continued. "The Galactic Council has forced humanity to develop new capabilities. In trying to limit our expansion, you have accidentally pushed us to evolve beyond the constraints that govern galactic civilization." On the alien command ships throughout the fleet, tactical officers were running sensor sweeps of the entire system. The results were the same everywhere: complete absence of human technology. It was as if 3 million people and their entire civilization had never existed. "Sir, Lieutenant Vex reported to Admiral Kor. Long-range sensors are detecting unusual energy signatures from multiple human star systems. The patterns match the readings we observed during their evacuation." "What kind of energy signatures?" Admiral Kor asked. "Unknown technology, Admiral. Whatever they use to remove their presence from this system, they are still using it throughout their territory." The implications hit the alien commanders like a physical blow. If humans could relocate entire civilizations in ours, then every assumption about galactic warfare, politics, had just become obsolete. Kane's message was still playing. "The quantum tunnel network that made this evacuation possible remains operational. Humanity now possesses the ability to move people, ships, and resources instantly between any points in our territory. We are no longer dependent on the hyperspace routes that the Galactic Council controls." In the Council chambers, Chancellor Vex was receiving reports from fleet commanders across the galaxy. Human installations that had been monitored for years were simply disappearing. Trade stations, research facilities, even small colonies were vanishing without a trace. "They're not just evacuating," Senator Mao reported, his insect wings beating frantically. "They are relocating their entire civilization to positions we cannot monitor or predict." Chancellor Vex studied the reports flowing in from across alien space, How many human installations have vanished? Over 200 confirmed disappearances in the last 6 hours, Senator Mel replied. They are removing themselves from any system where we have surveillance capabilities. The full scope of what humanity had accomplished was beginning to dawn on the alien leaders. In 24 hours, humans had not just saved 3 million people from one system. They had revolutionized their entire civilization. Kane's message was reaching its conclusion. The Galactic Council wanted humanity to be contained within the boundaries you set for us. You have succeeded. We are no longer expanding into space that you claim belongs to others. He paused, and for the first time, Kane smiled. However, you should understand that we are no longer limited by the boundaries that contain other species. The quantum tunnel network means that human territory now exists wherever we choose to place it. Admiral Core realized the true horror of the situation. Traditional galactic warfare relied on controlling hyperspace routes and strategic positions. But humans could now appear anywhere without using those routes. They could establish bases in systems that were impossible to reach by conventional travel. Furthermore, Kane's message continued. The technology that saved our people from your ultimatum is now available to protect human interests throughout the galaxy. Any attempt to threaten human civilians or installations will be met with capabilities that your military planners have not prepared for. The message beacon began displaying technical data that made the alien scientists on every ship stare in amazement. Power generation levels that exceeded anything in their databases, while transportation capabilities that violated their understanding of physics. Communication networks that operated outside known subspace frequencies. We thank the Galactic Council for forcing us to achieve these breakthroughs, Kane said as his message began to repeat. In trying to eliminate humanity, you have accidentally caused us to become something far beyond what we were before. Admiral Core looked around at her fleet of 800 ships. Just hours ago, this force had seemed overwhelming. Now she realized that they were not just outnumbered, they were obsolete. Admiral, her communications officer, reported. We are receiving surrender requests from several member species in the fleet. The Traders Union ships are requesting permission to withdraw from the operation, Sir Lieutenant Vex added. The Science Council vessels are asking for permission to begin diplomatic contact with the humans. They want to discuss technology sharing agreements. Admiral Core closed her eyes. The unity that had brought 12 species together to contain humanity was crumbling. In less than one day, humans had gone from being a species facing extinction to being the most technologically advanced civilization in the galaxy. Send a message to the Galactic Council, she ordered. Tell them that the human problem has not been solved. It has become something much larger. The alien fleet began to disperse, each species returning to their home territories to report the impossible news. Humanity had been given 24 hours to leave, and instead of fleeing, they had used those hours to become unstoppable. The galaxy would never underestimate human determination again.